Morning. It is now. Right, so we are looking at John 5. Anybody from the picture tell me what the story is? The paralyzed man at the pool. Okay. Now, before we get into the story, I need a volunteer. Don't worry, it's a really, really simple little game that we're going to play. And let me tell you what you have to do. You sit on a chair here. And then when I say go, you have to take the ball, put it in the bucket. Simple. I might add, you're playing against me, and you're going to lose. So anybody willing to lose to me playing a game? I need a volunteer. Nice, thank you. Well done, brilliant. Let me give you the ball. Which seat? Any seat? That seat, okay. Now, this ball represents all the stuff that you don't want in your life, whether that be weakness, sickness, or sin, anything like that. So you're wanting to put it into the bucket before I do, because only one of us is allowed to put it in the bucket. Okay, if one of us gets there first, the other cannot put the ball in the bucket. And therefore you've got to hold on to that sickness, weakness, and sin. Okay, you got that? Okay, you all understand the rules of the game? Really simple. Get the ball. You can't throw it in. You've got to place it in. All right, so are you ready to play this game? Right, okay. So we'll do a best of three. Okay, best of three. Okay, ready, steady, go. Sorry, you missed the first one. It's not fair. Well, that's not fair. Is it? Okay, all right. Let's try again. Let's try again. You ready? Okay, go. Okay, all right. So that's not fair. Let me come and take this seat here. No. You get to sit in that seat there. Okay, so you sit there, and I'll take this seat. Okay. You ready?
One sec, hang on.
You ready? Go. Oh, I'm so sorry, not sorry. Thank you. Give a round of applause. Take your seat. Thank you. Okay, all right. So that wasn't really fair. But that's this story. How did that feel, knowing that each time there was no chance you were going to get in? How did it make you feel? What? No good. No good. Okay. Now imagine that and multiply it by every single time there was an opportunity to get into the pool, but somebody got before you. Not just once, twice, three times, but year after year after year. Give me some words that would describe how you might feel. Hopeless, desperate, unseen, heartbroken, forgotten, desolate. There we go. There we go. That's the word of the Lord there. Now, remember those feelings as we go through the story. Okay, so this is John 15 from John 5 verses 1 to 18. There was a festival of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, anybody know anything about the sheep gate? It's true. It's where they would bring in, it was the gate where the sheep that had been raised for the purpose of sacrifice would be brought in. So it was a significant gate. It was the first gate that was restored by Nehemiah back when they rebuilt the walls. There is a pool called in Hebrew Beth Zatha. There's two other names for this pool. Who knows what they are? See, I'm really testing you this morning. Bethsaida or Siloam. Okay, let's have the other one then. Bethesda. Yep, okay. Oh, sorry, I lost my place there. There we go. So there were 5 porticos. In these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. He'd been ill for 38 years. It doesn't say he was born with it. Often the scriptures will tell us that they were born with their illness. It doesn't say that. So maybe he might have been older than 38 and had some sickness that had caused him to be lame, or an accident, we don't know. But nevertheless, he'd been ill for 38 years. I've had a man cold the last couple of days, and that was bad enough. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he'd been there a long time. Now, Jesus knew he'd been there for a long time. It doesn't tell us how he knew. Normally, if Jesus perceived something to be the case, it says he perceived that. But it says he knew. This man had been in this portico area by the pool for a long time. Jesus had been to Jerusalem many times. So there's a good chance that Jesus had seen him year after year as he'd gone to Jerusalem, as was the case at various festivals and so on when they did their pilgrimage, that he would see the same man, knowing maybe that one day he would have an encounter with him. And he said to him, so you think of the picture. For 38 years he's been ill. But we don't know how many years he'd been by this pool wanting to get well. How would it make you feel if then somebody came up to you and asked you this question? Do you want to be made well? Think about that for a moment. Think about, with this game, this very simple little game, if we'd played it for days, in the same way, me always getting my ball in the bucket, you continually wanting to get your ball in the bucket before me, and then somebody asking you the question, do you want to win? Well, of course you want to win. Of course you want. Saying to this man, do you want to get well? That's the whole point in him being there. So the sick man answered him, Sir, I have... Actually, let's pause there for a moment. It says, Sir. We will see several times that this man had no idea who Jesus was. He calls him Sir. If he'd known who he was, he'd have called him Rabbi or teacher or something like that. Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I am making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me. Now, you will, in my Bible, it has a verse removed and put into the footnotes. In yours, it might add it in there. It says that there was this belief that this angel would come down and it would stir the waters. And the first person to get to the pool would be healed. And that's the point of the game. The first person to put the ball in the bucket would not only have won the game, but would have relinquished that sin, that weakness, that sickness. But then something amazing happens. Jesus was someone who would never beat about the bush. He said to him, stand up, take up your mat, and walk. And at once the man was made well, and he took up his mat and began to walk. Now, if I may indulge you for one moment, could I please invite you back? I'll give you your ball. Please take your seat. Now, let's remember that this ball represents sickness, weakness, sin, stuff that you don't want in your life. And let me ask you, do you want to get rid of that stuff? You do. So let me take it for you. Thank you. You may go and sit down. That right there was a reenactment of the story in a nutshell. The man couldn't get to the pool in time. His trust was in the stirring of the waters, whatever the truth of that might be. But Jesus comes along and he doesn't say, I'll help you get to the pool when it's stirred. He just says, get up, take him out and walk. Simple. It's a simple story. Now, we could say that the moral of the story is that we are unable to put right all the things that are wrong in our lives, and so to put our trust and our hope in Jesus, let him take away our sickness, our weakness, and our sin. After all, Jesus did say, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Learn from me, and let me give to you an easy yoke and a light burden to carry. Jesus said to do that. But, and the story could be over there. And that will be a good summing up, a good summary, a good place to end the story of that. That's what we should do. We should put our hope and our trust in Jesus. But we've got to remember, this is John's gospel. Now, all the gospels, there's always layers of meaning, but in John, there is always something bigger, something deeper. And actually, where we've got to so far, that's not the point of the story. Now, you just think, oh, this is the story of the man by the pool. The point of the story is that Jesus is a healer, and we put our trust and hope in him. And that's great. If you had to leave right now, that's a great line to take away with you. So, but let's keep reading. Are you ready for this? The next line is this. Now that day was the Sabbath. Oh dear. Jesus has done it again. It's the Sabbath. What do you not do on the Sabbath? Pretty much anything. You don't heal. For some reason, you don't heal on the Sabbath. It's classed as labor. It's classed as work. Now, this is how the story goes. So the Jews said to the man who had been cured, it is the Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to carry your mat. Okay, let's just recap for a moment here. We have this man who has been sick for 38 years. Goodness knows how many years he'd been by this pool. Everybody's seen him. Those Jews around there, milling around, will have recognized him most likely, and he's just been healed. He's been laid out horizontal for 38 years, and now he's on his feet. And they go, you're carrying your mat. That's what you call missing the point. But he answered them. Listen to how he answers them. He says, the man who made me well, so he's saying, the man who made me well, look, I am walking. He said to me, take up your mat and walk. So he reminded them that he'd just been healed. So now back to the Jews. They asked him, who is this man who said to you, take it up and walk? In other words, you're healed, yet, but you're carrying your mat. What are you doing that for? Now, the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had disappeared into the crowd that was there. So again, there we go. He didn't know who he was. When people are trapped in sickness or in any kind of form of weakness or particular sin that's really gripped them, it kind of reduces your world. You kind of get obsessed by what's going on in your life and you don't see everything that's going on around. Jesus would have been there, the stories would have been flying around, but he was trapped in his own little world. So later, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you've been made well." In other words, he's going to him and said, "Look at you, walking. That's fabulous. That is so good. You've been healed." And what does he say? He says, "Do not sin anymore, so that nothing worse might happen to you." And I was like, whoa. Great, you've been well, made well. Don't sin anymore, or things could get worse. We're not going to go into that because there is so much depth into there that we couldn't do it justice. But suffice to say that many people who find freedom in their lives through an encounter with Jesus often will fall back into whatever it is because they've not continued to walk in what Jesus has done for them. We'll leave that there for another time. So the man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. Therefore, the Jews started persecuting Jesus because he was doing such things on the Sabbath. Okay, so this is what it's all about. This is what this story is about. It's about the fact that Jesus was doing something on the Sabbath. He was teaching something more than just the fact that he could heal people. But Jesus answered them. And this is where it all hangs. My Father is still working, and I also am working. That statement from Jesus is what this whole thing hangs on. And you might think, what? The Father, the Creator, working on the Sabbath? That's not what my Bible tells me. It tells me that on the seventh day, he rested, and therefore we all rest on the Sabbath as a remembrance that we should rest. I say, yes, he rested from the creation stuff, from the earthly stuff. He doesn't rest on the spiritual stuff. In the Spirit, there's no days and times as such. It is all just the Sabbath. We live in the Sabbath rest. Jesus said that he is the Sabbath. So our rest is found in him. But the goodness of God never stops. Even on the Sabbath. And Jesus taught that, didn't he? Through the man with a withered hand. Through the story when they were saying, oh, you shouldn't do this. And said, well, if your donkey falls into a pit on the Sabbath, do you not take them out? And so on. And Jesus says, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So let's carry on. For this reason, the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him because he was not only breaking the Sabbath, which I think we've kind of understood that by now, but he was also calling his own Father, calling God his own Father, thereby making himself equal to God. Now that might not really make sense to us in our culture, but by Jesus calling God his Father, according to their culture and understanding, he was claiming equality with God. So if you've got people, because people do challenge you and say, well, Jesus never said he was God. There are a number of scriptures where it's clear that Jesus was saying, yes, I am God, and that he knew it. And this is one of those scriptures. So in closing, however young or old you are, whether it feels like things in your life are getting the better of you, or that there's no way through or out, our trust is always in Jesus. Not in what you can do, that will exhaust you. And getting beaten down will just make you give up. That was the story of the man. Our trust and our hope is in him. And only in him can we find freedom. Amen.